Dude, that's incredible.
Goodness, how y'all doing? What? Oh, we're live.
We are live.
We are live. Well, welcome to the Lyrical Meditation Cipher podcast. I am Tony Blackman, and I'm one of your hosts.
And I am Alexandra, your other host. We created this podcast because we believe that hip hop is in alignment, or it can be, with healing, wellness, and transformation.
That's right. And here in this cipher, we explore universal themes and topics related to personal growth and development. Each episode begins with meditation and prayer. Then we have a cipher followed by a conversation on the theme of the week.
And this week's theme is a really, really strong theme for all the women out there. It is aunties and the importance of intergenerational bonds between women. Before we discuss that, we are going to go into a little meditation led by our coach in residence, Takia.
Yes, let us ground ourselves with our feet flat on the ground, our hands on our laps, in a receptive position, palms to the ceiling. You can either close your eyes or just bring them to a gentle gaze. And let's bring our attention to our breath. As we inhale, allow your belly to soften as it expands. And as you exhale, let go of all that does not serve you in this moment. Let's inhale, expand and soften the belly. Exhale, let it all go. One more time, let's inhale. And as you allow this breath to enter and travel, follow it from your nose, in, down, like a wave, washing and cleansing every cell. Every cell is just jumping for joy, happy to have more life and more life. And as you exhale, let go of all that is weighing you down. Inhale life. Exhale all tension. Inhale life. Exhale all tension. Continue in this rhythm. Find your own wave of life. Allow this rhythm to move your body however it feels good to do in this moment. As you inhale, and this wave washes over every cell, feeding and nourishing every inch of your body. Know that this is a place you can return whenever you need a place to land. Inhale and exhale. Let's take 2 more deep breaths together. Inhale deep into your belly. Exhale. And on this last one together, inhale, fill your belly up, and then let go and give voice to all that is being released. And you are free. You are loved. You are home.
Divine Creator, we give thanks for another cipher. We give thanks for all of the lessons that we have learned on our life path that has turned us into aunties, that has allowed us to really step into our wisdom. May our words today be medicine. May our words today really touch the lives of each and every person who is listening in. May we be able to exude the confidence, the brilliance, and all of the embodiment of the lessons that we have learned on our path. We give thanks for our gifts. We give thanks for our ability to share through the power of hip hop. And we align ourselves to our next step in the here and the now. Ashe.
Ashe.
gosh.
A daughter of the moon, wisdom of the circle, color purple, sister sharing love. Our story's universal. From a child to a womb, experience has taught us lessons through our seasons that we pass to our daughters. We offer up our stories, turn our L's into lessons, encouraging each other not to sabotage our blessings. Apply knowledge, turn to wisdom. Our sisters give us reprieve, allowing space to be ourselves and graduate to Auntie.
Ooh, like a fine wine, asti spumanti, aged and refined, my aunties. Chosen family, upon entering, the bustle in the room stops on a dime, reverence for the energy. Oh, I called on her many times when life was in a bind, the refuge. If only in my mind I found it outside the bloodline. Kinfolk, even fictive, it gives us a place to belong, less restrictive, thrown in the deep end, no hands. Need a soft place to land. Extended fam expands the narrative, squeezing the perspective. We catch so much woe from man. We need to hear, yes, we can. So grateful, my aunties. They knew the assignment, told the whole truth with two T's and kept the alignment. The laughs and looks shared, some stern yet not unkind, the wisdom shed and the unfair, the reason that that thing wasn't so bad that time. There's something special, even divine, about the unspoken connection we all co sign. Although meticulous and profound, down to its nucleic, not only lineage in rewind defines the helix, the miraculous is also co found. You can change the design and even heal it.
Mm. Auntie Rizzy's on the line. Pick up. Please take a seat, dude. Gen Z, Alpha, blood or not, you know I see you. Nephews, nieces, listen, I beseech you. Redo, we cannot. So what we gon' do? Now, circle round, the ancient cipher is how we spar to take back what's ours. Hot bars, tonight is how we taking back ours. Hours and hours, too short, but money long. Too short, the Bay origin, Miss Tony Toka. Thank you for inviting in this abierta boca. Mocha, skin, the grin, figure, cola coca. This chance I'm giving in, I'm taking in. Fuck the times we living in, synonym. The same we all won. Now what was I saying? I must be on one, ADHD. Oh yeah, that's right. Lord said he'll never forsake me. So the same to elevate we, she, they, gay, it's elementary. Step by step, we must walk together, talk together, fists high, black on leather. Sidebar, map the stars, eclipse, sunspot. Cause y'all got proclivities to spot a yacht, but what about the bots that rot your mind shot? Detox, cause there's no sequel to Be Cool. Hear me, nieces, nephews, I beseech you. NPC, this ain't no bot, boo. This walk we're about to take, no mistake. Your auntie got you.
Hey.
Mm. When you hold my hand, I feel so brave. This sisterhood is sustenance, the gifts of strength and confidence. I mean it when I say, you saved me. Bound by the love we found, we formed a bridge to something more, a family not of blood, but one I have never had before. We're all aunties. I haven't had a baby yet, but when I do, her life will be infinitely better because of you. And to those who came before me and brushed my hair when my mother died and no one was there, we'll be braided together in this life and others, aunties, sisters, daughters, mothers, weaving an unbelievable dream, a world in which we all are queen.
Y'all, loving it, y'all. Weaving the fabric of life. It's the strength of our aunties, the grounding they provide that helps us navigate the strife. See, this fabric woven by aunties, wearing it feels so right. Guiding us through storms, holding us tight. In their embrace, we learn to shine our light. Aunties don't have to be bound by blood, just by the heart. Their love, a masterpiece, a work of art. Aunties teach us so many things. We learn resilience, wisdom untold in their stories, both history and the future unfold. Chosen family with a bond that cannot be broken. Aunties bring the hugs in their arms, no words are left unspoken. Across generations, they bridge, they are the bridges across sometimes troubled waters. Aunties bridge the divide, their presence a beacon, a steady guide. From their laughter, we learn to dance, and their silence reminds us to meditate, be still, and take a chance to grow, to learn, to simply be. That's the warm embrace of family and family. So here's to all the aunties, a pillar standing strong. In the symphony of life, they sing along. For their love, in their love, we find our song. We sing through smiles, through heartstrings, forever long. Forever, ever, forever, ever, and ever. Yes, aunties rock, aunties in the building. Shout out to Joy and we love you, Dion. Um, yes, y'all. I'm really excited to have this special guest of ours today, Christine Chong, also known as AKA Auntie Rizzy. You can find Auntie Rizzy on TikTok and on Instagram and all the platforms that you frequent. Um, she's a storyteller. She's a creative professional. As you can tell, she spits hot fire. And she's a comedian as well. And we're just really excited to have her here. She's also a hip hop head, if you couldn't tell. And so, Lyrical Meditation Cipher podcast is founded on the foundation that is hip hop music and culture in its 50th year still. This is the celebration, the birthday year. And we're here because we're excited to be here. We're honored to be here. We are honored to represent as women and as aunties. And we want to talk about this, y'all, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
What
Mhm.
would any of us have done on our journeys without our aunties? I mean, I
Seriously.
know, I know for me, it was like, I needed sometimes just a place to go that wasn't home, a place where I had a friendly face and someone that, you didn't have to necessarily talk when you could
Yeah.
be around,
Yeah.
So I know I appreciate those kinds of people in my life who could just hold space and you could just be with them. And it's an exuberant and fulfilling experience just to be.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a village to raise a child. And, every time that I visit Senegal, I'm reminded of that because you have like five aunties or five mothers, and everyone is there to serve different purposes. And, as a parent, I think that it's really nice to be able to have extended aunties or extended sisters that can also give my daughter different tools that I can't give her necessarily.
Hmm.
So yes, the role of the auntie is definitely important through every generation.
That's
Yeah.
that's so
Shout
right.
out, shout out to Rachel LeBlanc. I see you, Bunchi. As well. Rachel shouted, "Aunties matter. Aunties
That's
do.
right.
Aunties do
Mhm.
indeed matter." Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say that a lot of what I heard in our poetry and our rhymes today was the idea of chosen family. And I
Mhm.
feel like that can be in our interpersonal lives, but also chosen creative family. I feel like here on this podcast, we are all sort of creative aunties for one another.
Mhm.
Um, and I have a question for our special guest, Christine, about how have aunties in your life inspired you in your personal life, but also in your creative journey?
That's a great question. I would say the earliest influence would be in my own family. I take after the women, sort of physically speaking. I look more like the women on my father's side, and my mom doesn't have any sisters, and so I think that was where I felt like I had an example in the world because general Asian beauty standards tend to be slim and petite, and the women on my father's side were thicker and more fully and more rounded figures. And so, and plus their personalities also. And it made me feel okay to be outside of the expected standard. My mom is very long and lean, and she has very fair skin. Um, and my brother takes after her, but if I hadn't had the aunties on my dad's side, I don't know if I would have felt early on that I would have that I was okay. So
Mm,
those were some of the earliest influences my aunties have had.
Yeah.
wow, wow. Yeah, I think about my aunties and the way my mother allowed a village to surround me. So I had her sisters, but I also had my grandparents, my grandmother and my grandfather also had siblings, not that far away. And then my mom's best friends growing up, and then some of my aunties, like my Aunt Benny, her best friends became auntie figures as well. And then you had the neighborhood aunties, my friends, like, I think Wanda Brown, my childhood friend Latrice, her mother always seemed to be there. And I still talk to her sometimes. And then there are the church aunties. And then there were, because all the people in my hometown, our parents, many of our parents went to the same high school.
Mm,
And sometimes your teachers and counselors went to high school with your parents. So then
right.
you have that layer of aunties. And so when I say I grew up in a whole village, a whole community, I
Hmm.
really did. And I tell you, my heart goes out to the women that are raising children without that community. I just cannot imagine how hard it is, sometimes, and how challenging it can be. But like Rachel said, aunties matter.
Yes, they do. And I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought that up about how important it is. I think for children and for women, because, I'm thinking about at post birth, a lot of women go through um, after birth. I can't think of the word right now, but we go through depression. And a lot of that is because we don't have our sisters around us. We don't have women who are serving us food. We don't have women who are nurturing us. So just like you talked about growing up, you have that intro of like how to be a lady and different flavors or different styles of how to be a lady. And in today's culture, we call it auntie. At that time, it was just, maybe your godmother or different things like that. I feel like in some ways auntie has gotten a negative connotation because it's like, oh, I don't want to be an auntie. I don't want to take on that responsibility. Some women may believe that, but I think that yes, it definitely has its place.
But I think some of the negative connotation too comes from the way we regard age in Western culture. And
Mm.
there are some, they are almost violently opposed to being called auntie.
Mm-hmm.
And it always saddens me. I don't debate. People have a right to be called whatever they want to be called. However, I love traveling through different cultures. So whether I was in the Philippines or in uh in uh in Benin, whereas Tata Tony is here, Auntie Tony is here, and it's such a beautiful term of endearment, and I cherish my role as auntie. Now I know that I had only once, though, I've had one young woman do it to try to put me in my place. Like, who you think you are to be rapping up in here, auntie? And in that space, but I was like, excuse me, I out rap you, I have
Let
That's
them
why
know.
you wear auntie
to,
proudly.
Yes.
so call me for coaching, sis, little sis. I'm not offended by it when someone I don't know calls me. I'm just not. I love the idea. I love my role. I love the hat.
Well, it's
Yeah.
like all language, right? All language is culturally defined and also defines culture. So it just depends on where you go in the world and who you're talking to, and their perspective is valid. I think it's all in the energy, and how you say it. Like you said, she said it to put you in your place. You knew that because of the energy,
Yeah.
she was giving you.
Now,
um
Christine, I wonder. So, how do you define auntie culture?
um I guess the short answer would be mother adjacent. You know, we already touched on that. The sisterhood, the community takes a village. That's sort of the headline. But as we just touched on right now, it's steeped in a lot of history, a lot of complexity. It can be used in different contexts to mean different things to different people. Um, but I I love its universality. I love that it crosses cultural bounds. I tutored for a bit, and this Indian family had a live-in nanny, and they asked me to regard her and call her auntie. And I loved that, and I found that in context, I learned that it's not just a term of endearment, but it serves as an honorific in their culture. So for any elder, woman that's unmarried or otherwise, uh, would be regarded as such, and it was a term of respect and endearment. But it immediately puts you on the radar of who this person is, right? And its role, it's just so universal that I think it's instant. You get this feeling of familial ties, blood or not. Another feminine or female resource of wisdom, of tools, as Sanchel put it so nicely. Um, that's what it means to me, the community of women, that want to bring up the next generations, and even if they're not younger, a lot of our inner childs need auntie figures, and so I find that it has, in its meaning, such a universality that the second you regard someone or bring up the auntie culture or auntie as, a role, the person immediately knows what you're talking about and can feel that feeling of reassurance and, and, like, nurturing, um, matriarchy, for lack of a better word. Plus I like the play on words a little bit. I'm a little bit of a contrarian, and so I like that auntie can also be used as anti, A-N-T-I, so
Mm.
Ooh. So talk to
So,
us a little bit about how you came to be Auntie Rizzy as a persona. And what does this title mean for you in your creative work, in your life, in your relationships with other people?
Um, thank you for asking. It was sort of a natural progression of events. The auntie role was something that came about naturally when, in my previous relationship, I became the godparent of my partner's nephews, and so I, for the first time, was given this role that was beyond me. For the first time, I was being identified as a role that had nothing to do with me, but for the sake of these growing boys, and it resonated so strongly. And Rissy was the original term, short for Christine, and so originally it was Auntie Rissy, and that was just within my family ties, and then eventually, I started using it as an internet handle when honestly, this happened right when, Trump was elected. I felt so compelled to bring meaning to my internet persona or some kind of branding because I felt for the younger generations, being that I felt like I was the last generation to experience what life was like when it was simpler and before things were so accessible and, um, where, bad news wasn't so incessant and persistent. I felt for the younger generation. And so then I really assumed that role online. And then the Rizzy part was just a happy accident. I befriended a TikTok producer, and during one of his lives, he kept misreading Auntie Rizzy as Auntie Rizzy, and I was like, "You know what? That's right there." And, I do have the gift for gab, so it was a natural progression.
I'm wondering, of all the wisdom bestowed to you from aunties, what it has been the most impactful? And in turn, what is yours within your brand and your legacy? What's your auntie kind of message or piece of wisdom you want to bestow?
I think to me, the biggest takeaway of the auntie is this humanizing of the motherly figure, right? Because mothers, they have to really be the beacon for their children. And sometimes there's a lot of pressure in that to uphold, you know, you hear parents say all the time, I'm better for my children. I'm better because of my children. And, I've always found from, a third party perspective, wow, that's a lot of pressure to be perfect and to be, those good things, which we want to be for our children. But what I love about a, a sisterhood of aunties is that you offer flawed perspectives, a very humanizing and varied um, collective. And I think that serves as sort of a side door for children to humanize their mothers too. Because when you're young, you have no choice but to regard your parents as superheroes. But when you look at your auntie and you're like, well, they're kind of the same age and she's like that. So mom's probably like that too. And I find that because aunties are around, mothers also can sort of let that down a little bit and say, yeah, I'm also a human and I also have flaws and that's okay. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. As far as my legacy, I feel like um, that's yet to be determined, but I do know presently I want to create refuge for these kids. Like, it's going to be okay. I got you.
Yeah.
We got you.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm beginning, and I think that'll be the root of anything I take on, including comedy, storytelling, entertainment. Yeah, so that's I think will be the root of my legacy.
What
So
what
needed.
yeah. What advice would you give to people who might not have biological aunties or that want to build nurturing relationships with women in their community, with people like you or other inspiring women out there that really say, I got you? How do you find those people in your life?
I don't know if it's as hard as some may think. Well, if you feel as if you don't have access to aunties, I encourage our listeners to be in the company of wise and elder women. And you'll find that more times than not, and this could be your local cashier at your grocery store. Um, I always find auntie figures in every pocket of my life. And I think it's just a natural, I hate to, genderize it or anything like that, but it feels like a natural instinct and role we take on when it comes to someone that needs our help. So it could be as simple as that. It doesn't necessarily need to be, uh, a permanent figure. Just any woman who's willing to share her resources with you in the moment, even if it's just to take 2 minutes to listen to what's going on with you and give you some advice. So at your local bus stop, on the local train, grocery store, on the corner. I mean, especially growing up near New York City, I feel like you could really find an auntie figure on every corner.
I love that.
Absolutely. Wow. It's really profound. Even some of the words you said about anti or anti.
Right.
Could you go into that a little bit more? Anti.
Well, I can't take credit for that. I think I just noticed that homonym. It was really when, Bad Gal Riri dropped the album and I saw, her stint with like in paparazzi and media, her just like love for her baby majesty and how she just was so like engulfed in her role as an auntie. And then she dropped the album, and it just immediately put it on my radar. But this was before I even decided to don the persona as one. And so to identify it personally, I'm a natural contrarian. I don't know if it's my ADD that naturally makes me do that. But I do find that I'm resistant to conforming or think, like, if I see that someone's, I don't know, if the let's say fashion, we're trending to wear short skirts, I'll start wearing long skirts and etc. So that's how I identify with the anti perspective.
That
I
brings
find that it helps my creativity. It pushes me to go beyond, outside the box a lot.
I was
Yeah.
actually just going to ask you about your creativity. So you must have been reading my mind. Because you talked a little bit about, fashion and being, styling yourself. And you're also a comedian, you're a performer, you're a producer. You do so many different things. So I want to know a little bit about how you pour into those creative things. And like, do you do a little every day? How do you decide what you're going to work on? Or is it just that you're kind of living and breathing in those things all the time?
It's a little, I hate to say all of the above, because I feel
Be a
like that's
contrarian.
yeah. I feel like, why choose? Why not all? That's another contrarian aspect to me. I must say, currently, I'm focusing on my stand-up because it's the most challenging. It requires the most of my bandwidth, because structuring my jokes and preparing to perform on stage without, writing without an audience in front of you to react is incredibly difficult, because you have to try and visualize and understand what that room will be like in that setting. And so that's where I think lately I've been spending most of my time. Plus, there's the aspect of getting comfortable on stage, as I'm still beginning my journey as a comedian. And so that hasn't fully happened yet, which, I don't know, I suspect that won't ever really happen from what I'm hearing. But yeah, so in terms of choosing, I think because it's my most challenging, it begets my attention the most lately. But in general, I am a big Jane of all trades. I love to go with, how I feel that day. Sometimes it could be as spontaneous as an idea just coming in. It could be from a conversation. Even in this room right now, as we're discussing different ideas, I'm being inspired. And so it could, open up a potential for a story series, and maybe that can evolve into a filmed series, etc. But generally, even with my fashion and my comedy and all of my creative projects, I find that trying something new is really my process.
Hmm. And being present, right, in that experience, it gives you everything, all the things you need. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
That's a
I'm so
daily
glad that
practice.
you I'm so glad that you brought up Rihanna, because I was thinking about an interview that she did a couple years back where they were talking to her about like the nature of her music and how it wasn't for children. And she was like, well, I'm not doing this for children. I'm basically, like you were saying, like in her anti, and like I can see that side of it, but I'm also thinking about like going back to that question about legacy, because whether we are creating for children or not, children are watching. So I would like to know like what your thoughts are on the future aunties and how they can lead a legacy for children in their own unique way. What would you say are the tools?
I totally hear you. I think that's a great aspect to look at in terms of being role models. I think in terms of our creativity and our art, censorship is always heavy. It's always frustrating to work against. So I'm big on, flow of consciousness, and letting it all come out in its raw and pure form. And then if you want to contextualize it, make it more PC, etc. I mean, in the comedy scene, it's supposed to be a free space. It's supposed to be a safe space to express controversial ideas. But you can't forget that there's an audience there, and the audience is filled with opinions in different walks of life. And so, how do you contextualize that with the purity of a thought? Um, I think that's a worthy question to explore, and I'm pretty sure I will always find new answers for that. I would say right now, I think it would be a disservice to my art if I was constantly contextualizing and making it PG for younger audiences. But I do hope that my art form will continue to evolve and get to a place that doesn't need to be controversial or doesn't need to come out in that way. I am working on being an effective messenger in my storytelling. And so I understand that while it's self-serving to get it all out and in its purest form, that if the message doesn't land, then it I need to go back to the drawing board a little bit. So it is a little bit sort of a forward backward process, I think. But I do encourage all artists and anti-figures alike to initiate the process in its purity and then decide as you go through the creative process how much you want to scale back and adjust for different audiences.
I love that. I love that. I want to ask everybody, all of you, what's the best piece of advice an auntie gave you? And that could be auntie by blood or auntie by heart and chosen, to think about what's the best guidance you've received from an auntie throughout your years. Is there anything, or is there a memorable moment where you learned an important life lesson from an auntie? Um, I know I'll start. My aunt Jennifer, my late aunt Jennifer, poet, writer, English professor, tutor, um, was a brilliant woman and incredibly loving. She had a huge heart. She even had she had raised her two children, but she then had foster care children, and she left academia and became director of the independent living program with the foster care service. And but she put a pen in my hand at 7. I was 7 maybe, and she also published my first book of poetry when I was 8. But she was the one who taught me when the going gets tough. You're right. You're right. You can't control anything in this world, but you can control that pen to that paper. You can control it. It will help you support your emotions. You're right. And to this day, it's my creativity is what helps me maintain my sanity. So shout out. Thank you, Aunt Jennifer.
I love that. Um, I've had several aunties in my life. I lost my mother when I was 10, and it was really hard for me to kind of navigate the world and not really feel seen by women in my life. But I actually met an auntie who I would call more of a sister, because she's not a replacement for my mother necessarily, but she is a forever young. And again, as we talked about the aging thing a little bit too, she was actually a NYU professor, screenwriting professor. And my dad, who was in his 70s, took a class with her in his 70s at the time. And they had a writer's room. And I came to one of the writer's rooms, and she and I just hit it off instantly. And we really formed a sisterhood. And I found someone that was not just a friend, but also a creative partner that I could call and talk to about writing and things in my life. And this happened just a few years ago, and I'm 35. And it was this friendship, this familial bond that I didn't even know that I really needed, but I was calling it in my life. And I'm just so grateful to Marilyn for you and just your presence and seeing me and saying your art matters and it's important. And to have someone say that I believe in you. And that just really, it moved me.
I would say that I've had several also. So I'm just picking one because the one that kept coming to mind was the moment that I became an auntie, and the first time that my niece put her hand in mine, and I went like, like protect mode, like all kids are my kids, you know. But I would say that probably the most profound advice or moment that I had was when a coach that I chose to have as a friend when I was a player in high school. She said to me, you know, they broke the mold when they made you. And it really stuck with me because at the time I wasn't really very confident in, you know, owning who I was, nor did I really know how good I was. And it always felt like I needed to aspire to be more. It was just not enough. And so I remember like having those words like settle in my body and gave me a reference point, like a reminder when I needed to pull strength and when I needed to remember who I was, when I needed to know that I got it, you know, for a while. It got me through some things.
Yeah, words are so important. I would say for me, what's coming up right now is Rhapsody James, who's a very, very well-known choreographer in LA. I went and studied for a couple of weeks in LA, and coming out of the concert world and going into commercial was very intimidating for me. But I remember her really affirming, like, you are an artist, don't ever lose your artistry, and really helping me to step into owning my body in a way that I never felt comfortable with owning at the ballet bar. But she's like, this is your body, this is what you got, you know, make it work. And I think that just changed the complete trajectory of like how I view myself as a dancer. I was able to move into dancing more instead of just always worrying about, well, my body looks like this, or I'm different from everybody else, or different things like that. So I just want to give honor to her today.
Love that.
Wow. That's amazing. I wouldn't say it was advice that I had gotten, but just watching my 6th grade teacher walk in her truth, just be her absolute self.
Yeah.
She was a big fan of The Nanny and really had no business in short skirts. And, you know, was loud and like, you know, just fabulous, but just was under the scrutiny of all the other elementary school teachers. And I remember seeing that it didn't faze her and that she, in her vulnerable moments, would, you know, be very real. But I saw that she donned it anyway because she loved it, and in her own way, I'll never forget just how fabulous she was, just in that attitude of, I love this, and this is how I want to show up in my life, and that's it. And no one else can tell me nothing. And I'll never forget that. So I want to say that was probably the most impactful auntie that I can remember.
I think sometimes just seeing people really go for their dreams, the women in our lives, inspires us to do the same. And this, you know, is a perfect moment to talk a little bit about Tony Blackman here, who just released the book, The Wisdom of the Cipher. It's available.
Yeah.
Have a chance. First of all you listeners, Tony, obviously you can tell her voice has so much healing power. Her words just hit you right in the heart. That's just a little snippet of what you're going to get in her book. So I really just wanted to call today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's go. Wisdom of the aunties. Wisdom.
Yes.
Well,
Christine, before we go, do you have anything right now that you're working on that you want to talk about?
I am on Instagram and my TikTok really promoting my personality and content. And ultimately, the goal will be to host a live advice column show on YouTube. So look out for that. Handle is Auntie Rizzy, AUNTIERIZZY.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, I think, you know, this I like the conversation because we talked about chosen family, blood and aunties, and really acknowledging the expansiveness of what it means to be an auntie. And I know that as we move forward, we're going to need to be able to dig deeper as a community, as a country, as a global community, because what's happening in the world right now, we need each other.
We
We
do.
really need each other, and the children need us. And everybody's not cut to serve. You know, some folks are healing so deeply that their day-to-day survival is tough. So the people who have the capacity are going to have to really step up. And I think part of it is believing that your presence is enough to
Hmm.
inspire and empower others to reach their full potential. And your presence is enough. And I say that to our listeners. If you clicked up on this recording, that you really get and recognize the significance of your contributions, no matter how small, it can enrich the lives of someone. It can make a difference with someone. And it's not always money that you need. Sometimes the currency is your heart, the currency is your time. The currency is your attention. So remember, say to yourself, I trust in my ability to uplift and support, provide guidance and encouragement to those who need it. It's that simple.
Yes.
It's that simple. So let us affirm that. Let us affirm that. Let us embrace our role, and let us keep flowing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Well
love that.
said.
Yes.
From the Lyrical Meditation Cipher podcast, we breathe,
We
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 spit,
split
spit.
and we
we
vibe.
yes. That's what we do. We breathe, we spit, and we vibe on the Lyrical Meditation Cipher podcast. We want to thank Christine Chong for being our guest today. You can follow her at Auntie Rizzy, Rizzy, on TikTok and Instagram, you know. And look out for the work that she's up to, her upcoming performances and sharing of her creativity. And we've got a lot in store for you all this year. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening and thank you for supporting. We're really amped about moving deeper into this video work with the podcast, and we've got a lot to bring to you. So thank you.
Peace
And
and
peace.
love.
Thank
Peace.
you.